You've heard the phrase, the Great Turning, in recent years. It's a Joanna Macy term, and it's the Great Turning from the Industrial Growth Society to the Life-Sustaining Society. And a consummation devoutly to be wished, right? But the Great Turning begins with the Great Unraveling. And one of the things Joanna Macy taught and still teaches that I also saw reflected in the work by Sherry Mitchell. She's a Native American writer, and she's written a book about wisdom for this time. And they both agree that we do not need to spend a lot of energy raging against the outdated institutions that are making all kinds of trouble, because those institutions will fade and fail on their own. And that what we really need to do is be building the world that we want to live in. And so that decline of those institutions is the Great Unraveling. They are just going to fall apart on their own. And yes, there's going to be real suffering. They're going to take a lot of lives and a lot of ecosphere with them. But that unraveling is inevitable. And I think having that framework has helped me in the midst of this time, the impossibility of the least qualified leader of the free world, maybe arguably ever, and this global pandemic, and the failing of the economy for non-billionaires, and then the ongoing ecocide that we are seeing most manifest in California right now in these wildfires caused by climate change and drought, that I sort of, I've had a framework for those things. So I think I'm a little less paralyzed. And of course, what they are is they're a harbinger of opportunity, that there's an opportunity, you can taste it, for something radically different to happen. And Quakers have been a part of radical societal change in the past because we've sort of have had a North Star right through whatever the mess was, so that when something opened up, we were ready to move in that direction. I remember years ago seeing a bumper sticker that said, "I'm already against the next war." And I thought, yeah, that's Quakers. Like, I don't, you know, whatever you got, I'm against it, you know. I'm already against the next war. You don't need to give me your arguments. I'm going to be unconvinced. And so, we want to see a society that has equality, and for every person, that every human person is able to realize their full potential. We know that as a principle that has a spiritual origin, that of God in everyone. And so that's what's exciting to me at this time. And I do feel down. I listened to some of the Republican National Convention yesterday, driving home from seeing my father last week down the Central Valley with just this incredible haze and the sun, the color of blood, because of the smoke and pollution from the fires. It's not that I'm skipping blithely, but it is that I have an eye to what wonderful thing is being born in this time. Well, it starts with the grief work. And of course, we're always doing grief work in end-of-life care. People are grieving the ending of their own lives, or they're grieving something that never happened and now never will. They're grieving just departing. A lot of folks are actually pretty okay with their dying. And the hardest part is that they're going to leave people that they love, just like our ancestors left, non-Native Americans left where they were from, and could expect not to see those people anymore. And so, so we're always doing grief work. And Joanna Macy starts with grief work, that whether we know we're connected to the earth or not, we are cells in this Gaia body, and we know that it's in trouble and suffering. And so we have this very intense, almost cosmic grief, and then we have our individual griefs, right? Our individual losses, our individual pain. But I think there is some deep grief work that we need to do in order to be able to free ourselves up, to move, into the life, in order to be able to move with the kind of courage and speed that we need to. Well, I think the thing that's been with me since this trip down the state last week, the trip was supposed to be really restorative. We were going to camp and sit by a lake, and everything was on fire. So we just drove home in a hurry down Interstate 5, and like I said, the air quality was just terrible, and the sun was the color of blood, and as much as I accept the Great Unraveling, it is very difficult not to be fearful. And I think there's a reason that every faith tradition, every spiritual tradition, but certainly the Holy Bible itself, admonishes us not to be afraid again and again and again, is that fear is just a great obstacle. It gets in our way. But we can't will ourselves to be fearless. And so I think it's good to be able to name the terror, to say, what is terrifying you right now? What is fearful? Are we afraid that all my retirement savings are going up in smoke in the market, or I lost my job and I don't know how I'm going to pay rent, or I'm really afraid of getting this virus, or 4 more years of this administration and we'll be a failed state. I mean, if we can name our fears and sort of face them and then center, but I think the thing that we have to recognize is that no one looks upon the face of God and lives. And so it is about annihilation. And when we embrace that, we can be freed from our fears. And when I need inspiration around that, because nobody recorded Jesus with a cell phone or something, I listen to Martin Luther King's mountaintop speech, and it is so clear that he understands that he is preaching renewed economics, nonviolence, a world without war, and racial equity. He is, in other words, preaching a radical gospel of love, and that the powers that be, that Rome is going to kill you if you do that. He knows that. It's so clear, and yet he's undeterred. And we have to figure out how we carry our own cross, because otherwise we cannot be the liberative witness that the world is needing. There's not going to be an easy way to sign an online petition or send a check. That's all good to do, especially for these dying institutions that need our help. But we are playing for all the marbles, and it's a high stakes game. There's a lot of risk. And it is frightening. And at the same time, the word courage, it comes from the heart. To be encouraged is to be enheartened. And I think we should be enheartened. And that our Quaker communities should be, schools of the spirit, places where that encouragement is nurtured and it becomes contagious and grows and becomes a force again in the world for good. That's my hope. But I'm not going to try to tell anyone that it's easy. It's easy. I think it's hard before it's easy.